Han checked his tablet for the fifth time that morning. The screen still showed the same message: Galactic Combat Institute, Building 7, report immediately. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. This had to be wrong. He had applied to the Galactic Science Academy. He wanted to study alien biology and maybe discover a new species one day. He was not a fighter. He had never thrown a punch in his entire life. The shuttle had already left Earth 3 days ago. He was now floating somewhere in deep space, heading toward the home world. They were a proud warrior race. They looked like wolves that walked on two legs. They were tall, muscular, and covered in thick fur. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dark. Their teeth could bite through metal. And apparently was going to school with them. He tried to contact the administration office, but every message bounced back. The communication channels were locked during transit. He would have to wait until he arrived to fix this mistake. The shuttle landed with a heavy thud, grabbed his small bag and stepped outside. The air was cold and thin. The sky was gray with two pale moons hanging low on the horizon. Everything looked sharp and dangerous. A massive guard stood at the entrance. He was at least 8 feet tall. His armor was black and covered with scratch marks from old battles. He looked down at like he was looking at an insect. "Name," the guard growled. "Han, but there has been a mistake. I was supposed to go to the Science Academy, and I think someone made an error with my paperwork, and I really need to speak with someone about this because I am definitely not supposed to be here." The guard did not care about his explanation. He scanned the tablet, found the name, and pointed toward a large stone building in the distance. "Building 7, move." Walked, his legs felt weak. The ground was hard and covered with black rocks. Other students passed him. All of them were huge. They stared at him with confusion and disgust. A few of them laughed. One of them made a snapping motion with his jaws. Building 7 was enormous. It looked like a fortress made of dark metal and ancient stone. Banners hung from the walls showing images of wolves tearing apart their enemies. Felt his stomach turn. He entered the main hall. Hundreds of students stood in neat rows. They were all wearing combat uniforms, was wearing a sweater and glasses. He had never felt more out of place in his entire life. A loud horn sounded. Everyone went silent. At the front of the hall, there was a raised platform. On that platform sat a throne made of bones, and on that throne sat the most terrifying creature had ever seen. She was a female, but she was different from the others. Her fur was pure white. Her eyes were silver like frozen lightning. She wore armor that looked like it was made from the scales of some massive beast. A crown of black metal rested on her head. This was Empress, the Wolf Empress, ruler of the Empire and headmaster of the Combat Institute. She scanned the room with her cold eyes. The students did not breathe. No one dared to move. Then her gaze stopped on. He felt his heart freeze. Her silver eyes locked onto him like a predator spotting prey. A small smile appeared on her lips. It was not a friendly smile. "What is this?" she said. Her voice was soft, but it carried across the entire hall. "A human in my school." Every head turned toward. He wanted to disappear. He wanted the ground to open up and swallow him whole. "There has been a mistake, Your Majesty," he said. His voice cracked. "I was supposed to go to the Science Academy. I study plants and small animals. I am not a warrior. Please, if you could just contact the administration and they can transfer me to the correct school." Empress tilted her head. She looked amused, like a cat playing with a mouse. "The enrollment period has ended," she said. "Once a student is registered, they cannot transfer until the semester is complete. Those are the rules." Felt the blood drain from his face. "But that is 6 months from now." "Yes. I will die. Perhaps," she leaned back in her throne. "But that is not my concern. You are registered as a combat student. You will train as a combat student. You will take the same tests as everyone else. If you survive, you can leave at the end of the semester. If you do not survive, well, that is the nature of war." The other students laughed. Some of them howled. One particularly large male stepped closer to and growled in his ear. "I am going to enjoy watching you bleed, little human." Said nothing, he could not speak. His throat had closed up with fear. Empress raised her hand, and the hall went silent again. "The first kill test is tomorrow," she announced. "All first-year students will participate. It is a survival simulation. The goal is simple: hunt or be hunted. The student with the most kills wins. The student with the least kills faces punishment." She looked directly at when she said the word punishment. "You are dismissed." The students began to leave, stood frozen in place. His mind was racing. He was a nerd. He read books. He collected samples. He had never hurt anyone in his life. And now he was expected to fight against creatures that were twice his size, 3 times as strong, and had claws that could tear through steel. He thought about running, but where would he go? He was on an alien planet millions of miles from Earth. There was no escape. There was no help coming. A young female approached him. She was smaller than the others. Her fur was gray and her eyes were soft. "You should eat tonight," she said quietly, "and sleep. Tomorrow will be hard." "Why are you helping me?" asked. She looked at him with something like pity. "Because you are already dead. The least I can do is be kind to you before the end." She walked away, stood alone in the empty hall. The torches flickered on the walls. The shadows danced like hungry ghosts. He looked up at the throne where Empress had been sitting. It was empty now, but he could still feel her eyes on him, watching, waiting. He was not a fighter, he was not strong, he was not fast. But Han had one thing that they did not understand. He was human, and humans had survived ice ages, famines, wars, and the cold emptiness of space. They did not survive by being the strongest. They survived by being clever. Tomorrow, he would show them what a nerd could do. He clenched his fists and walked toward the dormitory. His legs were still shaking. His heart was still pounding. But somewhere deep inside him, a small fire had started to burn. He was going to live, no matter what it took. Did not sleep that night. He sat on his small bed in the corner of the dormitory and thought about everything he knew. The other students snored loudly around him. Their bodies were massive. Their claws twitched in their sleep like they were hunting even in their dreams. He was going to die tomorrow. That was almost certain, but he refused to accept it without a fight. He pulled out his tablet and began to research. The kill test was a simulation. That meant it was not real combat. It was a virtual environment designed to test hunting skills. Students would be placed in a digital arena and given weapons. They would hunt each other until one remained standing. There were natural predators. They had sharp senses, fast reflexes, and killing instincts built into their blood. They would chase their prey and tear it apart with brute force. But notice something in the rules. The simulation tracked kills based on confirmed eliminations. It did not matter how you got those kills. Strength was one way, but there were others. He spent hours reading about past tests. He studied the maps. He memorized the terrain. He learned where the weapons spawned and where the hiding spots were located. By morning, he had a plan. The students gathered in a large metal chamber. Pods lined the walls. Each student would enter a pod and be connected to the simulation. Their bodies would stay safe in the real world, but inside the digital arena, everything would feel real. The pain, the fear, the death. Climbed into his pod. The door closed with a hiss. Darkness surrounded him. Then light exploded across his vision. He was standing in a forest. The trees were tall and twisted. The sky was dark red. Strange sounds echoed in the distance. Howls, growls, the hunt had begun. Other students were scattered across the map. Could see markers on his display showing their general locations. Most of them were already moving. They were tracking each other, ready to fight. ran in the opposite direction. He was not looking for enemies. He was looking for resources. The map had shown him that certain areas contained traps and tools, things that would ignore because they did not need them. They had claws and teeth. Why would they need a simple rope or a net? But was human. Humans had used tools for thousands of years. It was how they survived against creatures bigger and stronger than them. He found a small cave near the edge of the map. Inside, he gathered everything he could carry: wire, explosives, a small blade, nothing powerful on its own, but together they became something deadly. For the next hour did not hunt, he built. He set traps along the narrow paths that led through the forest. He created trip wires connected to explosive charges. He dug pits and covered them with leaves. He hung nets from the trees that would drop on anyone who stepped in the wrong spot. Then he waited. The first came charging through the woods like a storm. His name was. He was one of the largest students in the class. He had bragged the night before about how he would break the human in half. He did not see the wire. The explosion knocked him off his feet. Before he could recover, a net fell from above and tangled his limbs. He roared and struggled, but the more he moved, the net became. Stepped out from behind a tree. He was holding the small blade. Looked at him with shock. "You, Hal." Did not answer. He simply walked forward and made the kill. The simulation registered it instantly. Vanished in a flash of light, sent back to the real world. One down. Word spread quickly. The other students began to hunt for. They wanted revenge for. They wanted to prove that a human could not beat them. But they did not understand what they were walking into. The second student fell into a pit. The third triggered an explosive that sent her flying into a tree. The fourth got tangled in a web of wire that cut into his fur the more he struggled. Moved through the forest like a ghost. He never attacked directly. He let his traps do the work. When the students were weak and confused, he finished them off with quick strikes. No wasted energy. No unnecessary risks. By the halfway point of the test, had 7 kills, more than any other student. Empress was watching from her private chamber. A screen in front of her showed every angle of the simulation. She had expected to see the human die within the first 5 minutes. Instead, she was watching him dismantle her best students one by one. Her advisor stood beside her. He was an old with gray fur and missing teeth. "This is impossible," he said. "He is just a human." "Clearly not just a human," replied. Her silver eyes were fixed on the screen. She watched set another trap with careful precision. "He thinks differently. He does not fight like a warrior. He fights like something else." "What?" Smiled. It was a cold and dangerous smile. "A hunter." Back in the simulation, was running low on supplies. He had used most of his explosives and wire. The remaining students had become more careful. They were moving in groups now, watching each other's backs. But had one more trick. He climbed to the top of a tall ridge that overlooked the main valley. From there, he could see 3 students working together. They were searching for him. Their eyes scanned the trees. Their ears listened for any sound. Picked up a rock and threw it to the left. The students spun toward the noise. They growled and charged into the bushes, convinced that their prey was hiding there. While they were distracted, circled around behind them. He moved silently. Humans were not as fast as, but they could be very quiet when they needed to be. He struck the first student from behind. A quick cut to the weak point at the back of the knee. The student fell and finished him before he could scream. The other 2 turned around. They saw their friend vanish and the small human standing in his place. They attacked. Ducked under the first swipe and rolled to the side. He threw dirt into the eyes of the second attacker and used the moment of blindness to slash at her arm. She dropped her weapon. He grabbed it and used it against her. The last student was faster. He tackled and pinned him to the ground. His claws came down towards throat. but had hidden one final explosive under his shirt. He triggered it at point-blank range. The blast hurt. It hurt more than anything had ever felt, but it was a simulation. The pain faded as the system registered the kill. Final score, hand 12 kills, first place. He opened his eyes in the real world. The pod door slid open and he stumbled out. His body was covered in sweat. His hands were shaking. The other students stared at him in silence. No one laughed this time. No one made jokes about the weak human. Empress was standing at the front of the chamber. Her arms were crossed. Her silver eyes studied him with new interest. "Congratulations," she said. "You have survived your first test." Could barely stand. His legs felt like water. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "Do not thank me yet." She stepped closer. Her presence was overwhelming, like standing next to a storm that could destroy everything at any moment. "You have made enemies today. Many students will want revenge. Your life just became much harder." Swallowed, "I understand." Leaned in close. Her breath was warm against his ear. "Good, because I will be watching you very closely from now on, little human." She walked away without another word. Stood alone in the chamber. His heart was pounding. He had won the first battle. But the war was just beginning. The days after the kill test were worse than the test itself. Had made himself a target. The students could not accept that a weak human had beaten them in combat. It was shameful. It was impossible. It had to be corrected. They started with small things. Someone put broken glass in his food. Someone else tore his bedding to shreds. His tablet was stolen and thrown into a garbage pit. Every time he walked through the halls, someone shoved him or tripped him or growled threats in his ear. Endured it all. He did not complain. He did not fight back. He simply kept moving forward one step at a time. But the harassment got worse. A group of 5 students cornered him one evening behind the training grounds. Their leader was a massive named. He had come in second place during the kill test. He should have won. Everyone expected him to win, but the human had stolen his victory. Grabbed by the throat and lifted him off the ground. His claws pressed against the soft skin of his neck. "You cheated," snarled. "You used tricks like a coward. In a real fight you would be dead in seconds." Could not breathe. His vision was starting to go dark, but he managed to choke out a few words. "Then prove it." His eyes narrowed. "What?" "Challenge me. Official duel. If you are so sure you can beat me, then do it properly, in front of everyone." The other students laughed. They thought was crazy. An official duel meant no tricks, no traps, just 2 fighters in a ring until one could not continue. Dropped to the ground. "Fine, tomorrow at sunset, the combat pit. I will tear you apart piece by piece." He walked away with his friends. They were already celebrating his coming victory. Sat on the cold ground and rubbed his throat. Red marks were forming where the claws had pressed. He had just agreed to fight a warrior in direct combat. It was suicide. But he had a plan. That night went to the academy library. It was an ancient building filled with scrolls and data tablets. Most students never visited it. They preferred to learn through action, not reading. Spent hours studying combat techniques. He learned their stances, their attack patterns, their weaknesses. Were powerful, but they were also predictable. They relied on strength and aggression. They expected their opponents to fight the same way. But humans had a different approach to fighting. They had developed martial arts over thousands of years. Techniques designed to use an opponent's strength against them. Ways to defeat enemies twice their size. Practiced alone in an empty training room. He moved slowly at first, memorizing each motion. Then he moved faster. He imagined attacking him. He visualized the massive claws coming toward his head, and he practiced dodging, redirecting, countering. By morning he was exhausted, but he was ready. The combat pit was an ancient arena carved into the rock beneath the academy. Torches lined the walls. Stone seats surrounded the circular fighting floor. By sunset, every student in the school had gathered to watch. They were expecting blood. They were expecting to see the human destroyed. Empress sat on a raised platform above the arena. Her silver eyes watched everything with cold interest. She had not tried to stop this duel. In culture, personal combat was sacred. If a challenge was accepted, it had to be honored. Entered the pit first. He was wearing light armor and carried no weapons. This would be a bare-handed fight. He raised his arms and the crowd roared with approval. Then entered. The crowd went quiet. He looked so small compared to so fragile. He was wearing simple training clothes. His hands were empty. He looked like a child facing a monster. The judge, an old warrior with scars covering his face, stepped to the center of the pit. "This is an official duel," he announced. "The fight continues until one combatant surrenders or is unable to continue. Killing is permitted but not required. Do both fighters understand?" Grinned, showing his fangs. "I understand." Nodded, "I understand." "Then begin." Charged immediately. He was fast for his size. His claws sliced through the air towards chest. Stepped to the side. The attack missed by inches. Spun and attacked again. Another slash. Another miss. Moved like water, flowing around each strike without ever being touched. The crowd murmured in confusion. Why was the human not fighting back? Why was he just running away? But understood. She leaned forward in her seat, her eyes fixed on the small human. He was not running. He was studying. He was learning patterns, timing his movements, waiting for the perfect moment. Grew frustrated. His attacks became wilder, more aggressive. He was using too much energy, leaving openings in his defense. Saw his chance. When threw his next punch, did not dodge. He stepped into the attack. He grabbed his arm and used the bigger creature's momentum against him. With a twist of his hips and a pull of his arms, threw over his shoulder. The massive slammed into the ground with a thunderous crash. The entire arena went silent. Scrambled to his feet, shocked and humiliated. He roared with rage and charged again. This time went on the offensive. He ducked under swing and delivered a quick strike to his knee. Stumbled, followed with an elbow to the ribs, then a palm strike to the throat. Each hit was precise. Each hit targeted a weak point, was not trying to overpower. He was systematically dismantling him. Swung wildly, caught his arm, twisted it behind his back and forced him to his knees. The howled in pain. "Yield," said calmly. Never tried to break free but applied more pressure. Bones creaked, tendons stretched to their limit. "Yield," repeated, "or I will break your arm, then your other arm, then your legs. You will never fight again." The crowd held its breath. This was not possible. A human could not defeat a warrior. It was against nature. It was against everything they believed. But it was happening right in front of their eyes. His face twisted with shame and fury, but he felt his arm about to snap. He felt the human's grip like iron chains. He had no choice. "I yield," he growled. Released him and stepped back, collapsed to the ground, clutching his injured arm. The arena exploded with noise. Some students were shouting in anger. Others were howling with disbelief. A few, very few, were actually impressed. The judge raised his hand for silence. "The winner is Han." Bowed respectfully and walked toward the exit. His body was shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst, but he kept his face calm. He did not show any weakness. As he passed the raised platform, Empress stood up. The entire crowd went silent again. "Human," she called out. Stopped and looked up at her. Her silver eyes seemed to glow in the torchlight. "You continue to surprise me," she said. Her voice carried a strange warmth that had not been there before. "Perhaps you are not as weak as you appear." Bowed his head. "Thank you, Your Majesty." She smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. We will speak again soon, Han. I have many questions for you. She turned and walked away, her white fur gleaming like snow under moonlight. Watched her go. His heart was still pounding, but now for a different reason. The wolf Empress was interested in him. He did not know if that was a good thing or a very dangerous thing. Probably both. He left the arena and disappeared into the shadows of the academy. Behind him, the students whispered his name with a mixture of fear and respect. The nerd from Earth was becoming something else, something they had never seen before. And he was only getting started. 3 weeks passed after the duel with. Things changed for at the academy. The open harassment stopped. No one wanted to challenge him directly after what happened in the combat pit. Some students still hated him, but they kept their distance. Others began to treat him with grudging respect. A few even nodded at him when he passed in the halls. But the biggest change came from an unexpected source. Empress summoned him to her private chambers. The message arrived late at night. A royal guard appeared at his dormitory door and told him to follow, had no choice but to obey. The Empress's chambers were located in the highest tower of the academy. The walls were decorated with ancient weapons and battle trophies. Paintings showed warriors defeating their enemies across 100 different worlds. Everything spoke of power and conquest. Was standing by a large window that overlooked the entire academy. The 2 moons hung in the sky behind her, casting silver light across her white fur. She did not turn around when entered. "Leave us," she said to the guards. They bowed and closed the heavy doors behind them. Stood in the center of the room, unsure what to do. The silence stretched on for a long moment. Finally, turned to face him. "Do you know why I built this academy?" she asked. Shook his head. "No, Your Majesty. The Empire has existed for 10,000 years. We have conquered dozens of worlds. Our warriors are feared across the galaxy." She walked slowly toward him, her footsteps silent on the stone floor. But empires do not last forever. They grow soft, complacent. They forget what made them strong in the first place. She stopped a few feet away from him. Her silver eyes studied his face. "I created this academy to forge the next generation of warriors, the strongest, the most ruthless, the ones who would carry our empire into the future." She tilted her head slightly. "And then you arrived, a human, a scientist, someone who has never held a weapon in his life." Swallowed nervously. "I apologize for the disruption, Your Majesty. It was a mistake. I never intended to come here." "I know," began to circle around him like a predator examining its prey. "But that is what makes you interesting. You were not trained from birth to fight. You have no genetic advantages, no enhanced muscles or sharpened senses. You are, by every measure, the weakest creature in this entire school." She stopped behind him. He could feel her breath on the back of his neck. "And yet you are winning," she whispered. "How?" His heart was racing. He did not know if she was going to kill him or kiss him. The uncertainty was terrifying. "I am just afraid of dying, Your Majesty," he said honestly. "When you are weak, you learn to think differently. You cannot rely on strength, so you rely on your mind. You plan, you prepare, you find ways to turn your weaknesses into advantages." Moved back around to face him. Her expression was unreadable. "Fear," she repeated. "You fight because you are afraid." "Yes." Most warriors would be ashamed to admit that. Met her gaze. Most warriors have never been truly weak. They do not understand what it means to face someone who can destroy you without effort. Fear is not a weakness. It is a teacher. It forces you to be smarter, faster, more creative. It keeps you alive when you should be dead. Stared at him for a long moment. Then something remarkable happened. She laughed. It was not a cruel laugh or a mocking laugh. It was genuine, surprised, perhaps even delighted. "You are a strange creature, Han," she said. "I have ruled this empire for 200 years. I have met thousands of warriors, generals, and kings. None of them have ever spoken to me the way you do. Was not sure how to respond. I apologize if I have offended you. You have not. She walked to a table and poured 2 glasses of a dark red liquid. She handed one to, "This is wine, very strong, be careful." He took a small sip. It burned like fire going down his throat, but the taste was surprisingly pleasant. Sat in a large chair and gestured for him to sit across from her. He did. "Tell me about Earth," she said. "Tell me about humans." It was an unexpected request. Thought for a moment, then began to speak. He told her about human history, the wars they had fought against each other for thousands of years, the plagues that had wiped out millions, the natural disasters that had destroyed entire civilizations. He told her about the ice ages, when humans had survived against impossible odds by working together and adapting to their environment. He told her about human creativity, the art, the music, the stories that had been passed down through generations. He explained how humans express their fears and hopes through culture, using imagination to make sense of a chaotic universe. He told her about human persistence, the way they refused to give up even when everything seemed hopeless, the explorers who had crossed oceans without knowing what was on the other side, the scientists who had unlocked the secrets of the universe through centuries of patient study, the dreamers who had looked up at the stars and refused to accept that they were unreachable. Listened without interrupting. Her silver eyes never left his face. When he finished, the room was silent for a long time. "Humans are remarkable," said finally. "I thought you were just another weak species, barely worth noticing, but you are survivors, perhaps even more than we have had to be," said. "The universe has never been kind to us." Nodded slowly. "I understand now why you fight the way you do. You carry the wisdom of millions of years of survival in your blood. It is not taught, it is inherited, instinctual." She stood up and walked to the window again. The moons had shifted position. The night was growing old. "The final trial is coming," she said. "The most dangerous test at this academy. Many students do not survive. It is designed to separate the truly strong from the merely capable." Felt a chill run down his spine. "What is the trial?" "You will learn soon enough." She turned to look at him over her shoulder. "But I want you to know something, Han. Whatever happens in that trial, you have already proven yourself. You have shown my students that strength is not just about muscle and claws. It is about the mind, the will, the refusal to accept defeat." She walked toward him and placed her hand on his shoulder. Her touch was surprisingly gentle. "You have changed things here," she said softly. "Changed me, perhaps. I did not expect that." Looked up at her. In the moonlight, she looked less like a terrifying empress and more like a lonely woman carrying the weight of an entire empire on her shoulders. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said. "Call me," she smiled, "at least when we are alone." She removed her hand and walked to the door. "The guards will escort you back to your dormitory. Rest well, you will need your strength for what is coming." The doors opened, and the guards entered. Bowed and left the chambers. His mind was spinning with everything that had happened. The Wolf Empress had shown him kindness. She had listened to him. She had called him by his name. He did not know what it meant, but he knew that something had shifted between them. For better or worse, his fate was now connected to hers. And the final trial was approaching. The final trial was announced on the last day of the semester. All surviving students gathered in the great hall. Empress stood on her throne platform, her white fur gleaming under the harsh lights. Her face was cold and serious. This was not the woman had spoken with in private. This was the Wolf Empress, the ruler of worlds, the judge of life and death. "The final trial is called the Blood Hunt," she announced. "You will be transported to an uninhabited moon. No simulations, no safety measures. The dangers are real. The deaths are real." The students murmured nervously. Even the most confident warriors looked worried. You will be dropped at random locations across the surface. Your mission is simple: survive for 3 days. Reach the extraction point at the center of the moon. Anyone who arrives alive passes the trial. Anyone who does not is either dead or failed. She paused to let the words sink in. There will be no teams, no alliances. You may help each other or you may hunt each other. The choice is yours, but remember this. The moon is home to creatures far more dangerous than any of you. They do not care about your rank or your training. They will kill you without hesitation. She looked directly at. The trial begins at dawn tomorrow. Prepare yourselves. That night packed his supplies carefully. A small knife, a fire starter, some basic medical supplies, nothing fancy, just the essentials for survival. The gray-furred female who had spoken to him on his first day appeared at his door. Her name was Sola. She was one of the few students who had treated him with any kindness. "You should not go," she said quietly. "The blood hunt is designed for the cold, the predators, the terrain. A human cannot survive out there." Smiled sadly. "I have no choice. If I do not complete the trial, I fail the semester. I will be stuck here for another 6 months, or worse." Sola shook her head. "Then at least let me give you something." She handed him a small device. "It is a heat generator, very old technology but reliable. It will keep you warm when the temperature drops at night." Took the device and held it carefully. "Why are you helping me, Sola? You have nothing to gain." She looked away, embarrassed. "Because you remind me of my younger brother. He was always the smallest in our pack. The others treated him badly, but he was clever, kind. He deserved better." She paused. "He did not survive his first year at this academy." Understood. She was trying to save him because she could not save her brother. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "I will do my best to return this to you." Sola nodded and disappeared into the darkness. The transport ships launched at dawn, was dropped on the dark side of the moon, far from any other student. The ground was covered in black ice. The sky was filled with stars but no sun. The cold hit him immediately, cutting through his clothing like 1,000 tiny blades. He activated the heat generator and felt warmth spread across his body. It would not last forever, but it would buy him time. For the next 2 days, moved carefully across the frozen landscape. He avoided the open plains where predators hunted. He climbed through narrow ice canyons that larger creatures could not enter. He found shelter in caves and cracks, sleeping in short bursts and never staying in one place too long. He heard other students in the distance sometimes, howls of triumph, screams of pain. The sounds of battle and death echoed across the empty moon. On the second night, he encountered his first predator. It was a massive creature, twice the size of a. Its body was covered in white scales that blended perfectly with the ice. Its mouth was filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness. It spotted and charged. He ran. There was no point in trying to fight something that large. He needed to be smart, not brave. He led the creature toward a narrow passage between 2 ice walls. The gap was just wide enough for him to squeeze through. The predator tried to follow but got stuck. It roared with frustration, its claws scraping against the ice just inches from his back. He kept running until he was sure he had escaped. Then he collapsed against a rock and tried to catch his breath. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. But he was still alive. That was all that mattered. On the third day, reached the extraction point. It was a flat clearing at the base of a tall mountain. A beacon was flashing in the center, signaling the location to any surviving students. Several were already there, waiting for the transport ship. Stepped out of the shadows and walked toward them. Some of them looked surprised, others looked annoyed. A few actually seemed relieved to see him. Then the ground shook. Something was coming, something big. The ice cracked and split apart. A creature burst from beneath the surface. It was the same kind of predator that had chased before, but this one was even larger. Its body stretched across the entire clearing. Its roar shook the air like thunder. The students scattered. Some tried to fight, others tried to run. But the creature was too fast, too powerful. It grabbed one student in its jaws and tossed him aside like a toy. Watched the chaos and saw something that made his blood run cold. Empress was there. She must have come to observe the extraction, and she was directly in the path of the creature. He did not think, he just moved. Sprinted toward the Empress, his legs burning with exhaustion. The creature turned its attention toward her, drawn by her movement. Its mouth opened wide, ready to strike. Grabbed a fallen weapon from a dead student and threw himself between and the beast. He plunged the blade into the creature's eye. It screamed, a horrible, deafening sound that shook the entire clearing. The creature thrashed wildly, trying to shake off the pain. Its tail swept across the ground and struck, sending him flying through the air. He hit the ice hard. Something cracked inside his chest. Pain exploded through his body. But the distraction worked. Other students attacked while the creature was blinded. They coordinated their strikes, targeting its weak points. Within minutes, the beast collapsed and stopped moving. Rushed to his side. Her face was filled with an emotion he had never seen before. Concern, fear, perhaps even love. "You fool," she whispered. "Why did you do that?" Coughed, blood appeared on his lips. "Because you told me to call you." She stared at him for a moment. Then she laughed, a broken, emotional sound that was half joy and half grief. Medical teams arrived and began treating his injuries. The damage was severe, but he would survive. Humans were surprisingly resilient creatures. 1 week later, a ceremony was held in the Great Hall. Empress stood before the entire academy. The surviving students of the Blood Hunt stood in a line before her. They had proven themselves worthy. They were now true warriors of the Empire. But there was one more announcement. Han called out, "Step forward." Walked to the front of the hall. His chest was still bandaged under his uniform. Every step hurt, but he kept his head high. Looked at him with those silver eyes that had haunted his dreams since the first day. "You came to this academy by mistake," she said. "You were meant to study plants and small animals. You were not supposed to be a warrior." She reached down and removed a ring from her finger. It was made of black metal, engraved with ancient symbols. "This ring has been worn by the personal champions of the throne for thousands of years. It marks its wearer as a warrior of the highest honor, a protector of the crown." She took his hand and placed the ring on his finger. "I claim you, Han. You are now bound to me. My champion, my protector, my partner in all things." The crowd gasped. This was unprecedented. A human, elevated to the highest position in the Empire. It was unthinkable. But did not care what they thought. She leaned close to and whispered in his ear, "You saved my life. Now I am keeping yours, forever." Looked at the ring on his finger. He looked at the woman standing before him. He thought about how strange life could be, how a simple mistake could change everything. He smiled. "I accept for whatever comes next." She took his hand and turned to face the crowd. "The future of the Empire begins today," she announced, "and it begins with this human." The crowd roared, some with approval, some with protest, but it did not matter. Han, the nerd who joined the wrong class, had become the most powerful figure in the galaxy. And it was only the beginning of his story.